Hey, what's good, everybody? I wanted to make this spirit animal video about the snake. The reason I chose the snake today is because I almost stepped on a little baby rattlesnake as I was climbing up the mountain, right? As I was hiking up at the steepest part, I was about to step, and luckily it moved real quick. It like twisted as I almost stepped on it, and I saw it, and then I stepped to the side, right? So, and it didn't strike out at me or nothing. And I guess once it felt comfortable, it saw I wasn't gonna do nothing to it. It slithered away, And the funny thing is, they say the little baby rattlesnakes they're the ones that don't control their poison yet, right? Like the older ones, they can control the venom better, and then the little ones just kind of, since they're barely getting used to learning about it, like they'll just let it all go, right? I mean, that's just a fun fact. I don't know. I'm sure I could tie that in spiritually, but um, the snake, more than anything, it jumped out to me because of healing, right? I went on this hike because I did need to let some stuff out, right? I don't know, like, if you've ever been like to a native sweat ceremony, if you're listening to this, but that's kind of what it equates to me when I go hiking up these mountains, right? It's kind of like I'm exhausting all my energy. I'm sweating everything out, like I'm pouring sweat. I try not to eat anything until I get to the top of the mountain, or drink anything really, unless I'm really like, just at that point, right? But it's like that, and then I really tap in spiritually when I'm hiking up these mountains. So to me, it was a healing experience, and then I run into the rattlesnake. Another strange thing about that, why it jumped out to me, is because it just turned to winter, which is really strange for me to run into a snake in the winter time, right? And I saw like two other things that I usually only see in the summer. So I thought that was pretty strange. So almost like everything's flipping upside down, right? So that's a whole nother thing. Um, but recently, even when I made the coyote video, and I think the deer video, because I just ran into like the most coyotes I ever seen in my life at one time, like in front of me. So I already like am expecting changes coming, and so I'm seeing these changes too in nature that I found pretty strange. And the snake has to do with change too, but let me talk about the healing first. So also, if you're familiar with Hermes or Mercury, right? Same person, the god Hermes, or Mercury as he's called, depending on the culture. He has a staff, like a magic staff with the caduceus, right, which is two snakes wrapped around, which is still used to this day, like by the medical, I guess, I don't know, industry, profession. It's used still. Like, if you ever see like people, like, in case they, the ambulance comes, or the paramedics, they have little tags or pendants with the caduceus on it, and some are like red if you're diabetic or this. So they tell the paramedics like, oh, the condition of this person, right? But it has to do with like healing, right? Like it's still involved with that, right? The caduceus, the snakes, right? And also in the Bible, I think there's the one where Moses, if I'm not mistaken, where God tells Moses, put the staff with the snakes, and whoever looks at it or something, like, they'll be healed from whatever was going on, right? I have to brush up. It's been a while since I read that chapter of the Bible, right? I think it's in Genesis, right? About Moses, or Exodus, maybe. Maybe it could be Exodus. Okay, so the snake has had that of, even in different cultures. Imagine, like, like I said, um, with the god Mercury, which was more like Roman culture. I don't know if the Romans called him Hermes, or I think the Greeks called him Hermes and the Romans called him Mercury, right? And then within the Bible, it was Moses with the snake, and it would heal and all that stuff, right? So it's long had that association with healing. And so even in native cultures, right, it's a very healing um animal, right? So when it shows up to me, I always associate, not always, right, but I associate it with healing. Like today, it did jump out at me as healing, right? Because the way it was, and it was all coiled up, wrapping up, right? Like it almost looked like that. Like, think of someone wrapped up in blankets, like at home, if they were sick and they're trying to heal, right? So it had that like really comfortable look to it, right? It was all coiled up, not in a striking position, just like it was resting in the sun, right? And I almost stepped on it, and luckily it moved, and so I didn't, right? So in native culture, like, it has a lot of, it has to do a lot with energy, right? And the earth, right? So you could think of the earth too as healing, right? It's like when you go into a sweat ceremony, and the on the inside of the ground is like the Mother Earth. It's almost like you're going into the womb of the Mother Earth, to heal, right? So if you've ever seen like the Aztec dancers, right, they have those things on their ankles, which are supposed to represent like the rattlesnake, right? Like the rattle of the snake, which is the closest animal to the ground, right? It literally slithers along the ground, right? So you think of that earth energy, right? And so to me, earth has to do with healing, right? That's where the earth, right, we get our medicine from, plants, the plants that bring us oxygen, like everything connected to the earth has to do with like energy healing. um you know I mean, you could think of energy too, right? Like the snake is a very primal animal, um because it is just like it's the epitome of instincts, right? Like if you ever seen the snake, like when they flicker their tongue, imagine that's how it connects, that's how it gathers information. So it's a very psychic animal as well. It also has to do with your psychic senses. So when it comes into your life, it could also be representing that you're tapped in, right? Or you're about to tap in, or you're tapped in. And when they flicker their tongue, imagine that's how it knows if there's prey around, predators around, what the climate's like, everything with just the flicker of the tongue, right? So it's gathering all that information. So I've always connected to it in that way too, right? When my little spidey senses were like boom through the roof, like I've ran into snakes, right, in nature. Um, Another thing is the shedding of the skin, right? Like I've kept the whole, like there were times in my life when I was going through a huge transformation, and I found like the whole perfect shedding of the skin, right? Like it just, and I was like, wow, like this is amazing, because not only did I find like the whole shedding of a skin, but then right by it was like a hole, right? So the snake shed its old skin and it went into the earth, which eventually is gonna come out new. So as I was going through this transition in my life, I've ran, and this has happened more than once, right? But it stands out to me, So that's another thing, right? Like the snake has that ability, death and rebirth, just like they say about like the scorpion, right? Or Scorpios are thought of, like even in the tarot, right? The Scorpio card represents like death, right? Death and rebirth, right? So it's always death and rebirth, not just death, right? But so that's what the snake literally sheds its old skin and comes out new, right? So it's an amazing spirit animal to, when you run into it, depending, like I said, like to me, it speaks to me very directly, the snake, right? It doesn't ever really leave me confused. It's like that. Like I'll see it, shedding its skin. I've literally seen a snake like shedding its skin in the process, or I've seen the the skin already shed, which meant like boom, you just come out of a transformation or stuff like that. But still, right? It's still time to go in and maybe look inward, right, or stuff like that, where it went into the cave, or the snake skin, the shedding was right outside of like some hole that it went inside, right? So it speaks to me very directly, right? Or if you see it like that, being protective, right? Like I ran into a snake where it was being protective, and it probably was more of a warning. Like I've had snakes where I ran into them where they were literally slithering, and then it startled me, right? Because I love snakes, so when it startled me, I felt like, it's telling me something's creeping about. And sometimes the same day I would hear from someone from my past, and when I didn't listen to the warning of the snake, that person brought me like drama, right? So, it's so it will warn me in that way too, right? So another interesting thing, this is definitely tied in more to the spiritual. Whenever I felt something was attacking me spiritually, like I'm pretty tapped in, so I'll do what I need to do to protect myself. So I'm usually pretty protected, so things won't affect me. But whenever I felt some kind of energy, even though it wouldn't be able to penetrate whatever protection I had, I'd have people around me that would dream of snakes, right? Like I remember once, someone I was talking to, they dreamed of a snake, and they said it was like they were attacked by a snake a couple times. Or, my dad would be like, oh, I had a dream like I was surrounded by snakes or stuff like that. And, most of the time I knew who was trying to send that negative energy my way. So those times, see, when the snake was coming in a dream, then it was very clear that it was it was like someone trying to attack me spiritually, and so the snakes were showing up to people around me, right? So even though I wasn't dreaming about them, maybe because I have the good connection with them, or I just would feel an energy, but they wouldn't really be able to penetrate whatever protection I had. People around me were dreaming of like scary situations with snakes. I think even in one of them, someone dreamed that there was like a huge snake or something, and but then I appeared in the dream and I grabbed it by the throat. So the snake, that's another warning it has given. Like it's like when someone around is trying to do some kind of spiritual attack or stuff like that. Another thing is that as I was hiking up, like right after I almost stepped on the snake, um I've been hiking up that mountain right there for a couple years now, and it was crazy because when I stepped, like, the side of the mountain started crumbling, which was really strange. Like, it's always been like sturdy rocks, but somehow, it broke and I almost fell. I caught myself with my hand because it's really steep, so, I didn't really fall. I just kind of fell forward, and, you know, again, it goes with the transformation, right? Like here's this baby snake, and there's all this change coming, transformation, healing, and then even that, right? Like there was a lot of weird things today happening, and even that, the fact that this, like the oldest crumbling, right? Like the side of the mountain that looked so sturdy and strong was now like crumbling, right? So it shows like life is constant, right? Like death and rebirth, just like the snake, right? Transformation, death and rebirth, changes. Let the old fall away and embrace the new, basically. Which kind of ties into the whole shedding of the skin and all that. Let me think. What else? So the healing, wisdom, right? I guess you could tie that in with the psychic. Even that with Mercury, right? Mercury, the way he was thought of as that, right? He could solve any conflict, right? I mean, and the thing was just more with his staff, but if you think about Mercury, to us, is communication, so words, right? Words can literally solve any conflict if you use them correctly. They can also start, everything. You could see the flip side to it, right? So psychic gifts, obviously, right? Like someone could use their psychic gifts for bad. Someone could, right? Like the snake, it has the ability to heal, but it also has venom. So you can also, you know, like kill someone with the snake venom if you wanted to, right? So that's why it warns too. It'll be that warning, right? But like let's just say, for example, the snake in its regular form, if you see it, it also always warns you, right? Like the rattlesnake, it'll throw up its rattle and it'll warn you, it'll shake it to like let you know, like, hey, you're getting too close. You need to stand the hell back, right? So if you think about it, why would nature do that? Like if it was an animal that wanted to hurt you, why would it do that, right? Like it wouldn't warn you. It'd be like the mountain lion that just prances on you and you're done, right? Like it's like, because the mountain lion is one of the most stealthy animals, right? So it would be more like that. So the rattlesnake actually doesn't want to hurt you. It has better things to do, and it will even warn you. But once you get too close, then boom, right? It's really fast too. So it's fast in that way when it strikes, right? When it strikes, as it slithers away, you could outrun it and all that. But when it strikes, it's pretty fast with its strike, right? So that could be another thing, right? It's a very protective energy. So you might be, it could either be telling you you're tapping into that protective energy, right? Because even the way it coils up and everything, maybe it's telling you it's time to be protective and stand your ground, right? Because the snake will, when it stands its ground, it just coils up and it just embraces itself, right? It braces itself, and kind of like preparing for battle, right? And then it'll strike at you if you get too close. So, it could mean one of all those things, right? But I guess mostly to me, the healing part stood out, and that's what I wanted to share. The healing, also like the wisdom, psychic abilities, right? Like just by its tongue, it senses all it, almost like it's painting a whole picture, right? The snake, the way it has that psychic ability with just its tongue, right? It feels, boom, all of a sudden there's a whole picture painted just by flicking its tongue. Like, to me, that's amazing. Like, I can't even emphasize how amazing that is. Like, maybe to anybody else it's like, but the fact that it's that tapped in is pretty crazy to me, right? So intuition, wisdom, protection. Maybe you could see that, like the stealthiness of it, right? Sometimes you don't need to be out in the open. You could be in that snake energy where it's just It's just time. But I guess that's tied in with healing, right? If you need to go within, I think there's no better than, no better spirit animal than the snake. I know I'm constantly hear it compared to like, or that it has to do with the Kundalini, the whole Kundalini thing. So there's supposed to be some kind of energy that's released with the Kundalini awakening, right? So this Kundalini energy, I guess they say it's like the coiled snake that's at the base of your spine, right? At the base of the spine. I know that's like your root chakra as well, but they say once the Kundalini awakens, it's like spiritual liberation. It has to do with the coiled snake. So I'll have to look up more into that, why that is, right? The Kundalini awakening. I've heard different people say different things, but it's just tied in with the snake. And it makes sense to me because the snake is like thought of as the epitome to kind of waking up. Maybe even like if you think about the Bible, right? Like they say the snake was responsible for Adam and Eve pretty much waking up, right? In the Bible, it was a negative thing. It's pretty okay. Like in life, nowadays in current times, right? It's like everything is backwards. That's so interesting. Because like I said, when I saw those three animals, they were animals that usually are at the exact opposite time of the year, right? Summer, and here I was running into them in wintertime, right? The snake, the bee with pollen, they had the pollen on its little legs, so it was like a bee, which usually, they're pollinating in the spring, summer, sometimes fall, but in the winter, it's just weird, right? So everything was flipped upside down, and yet that's kind of how it is with the snake, right? Like, I have no clue why, they say Satan, the snake, this and that. But the funny thing is, this serpent is supposed to be responsible for the awakening of Adam and Eve, right? Like, they weren't supposed to know the knowledge of the gods. And, I could see how you could, talk about it in a negative way. Like, if with the knowledge, somehow it brought the destruction of mankind in the future, right? They had it good. All they had to do was keep their head down. But if you think about it, even in life, right? When they tell you, like, just keep your head down, don't ask any questions, is that really ever a good thing? Like, it's a good thing to the people telling you to keep your head down, right? It's like a job, right? You're working there. Hey, you're getting paid $40 an hour. Just shut up and do what you're told, right? Meanwhile, maybe they're dumping chemicals into the ocean, right? So it's good for you, right? Like, so Adam and Eve, maybe that it was like, hey, just stay here. You're in paradise. All you got to do is just shut up, don't ask questions, run around butt naked, right? You're good. But, right, for some reason, this serpent that they say that brought the wisdom, that was like, oh, surely you won't die, or oh, if you eat this tree, you're going to know of the knowledge. And for some reason, the snake was tied into the wisdom, right? I'm not debating. I'm not trying to say the serpent was good or bad. I really don't know. Like I said, maybe that was the beginning of the fall of humanity, right? I'm just trying to show how the snake has always been tied into wisdom, right? Somehow, some way, even though they said it was bad wisdom, but maybe you could just see it all depends what you do with it, right? Like, maybe whoever made humankind was like, they're not ready for the wisdom. It's better if they just don't. Like, who knows? Maybe they saw the future and they were like, yeah, humankind, they're going to end up making nuclear bombs. They're going to end up this and that. One day, maybe they saw everything down the line and they were just like, yeah, this wisdom, it's better that you don't. Just run around butt naked and enjoy life, right? And just don't eat from here, right? But, all that aside, the snake was tied in to wisdom and knowledge, right? Somehow, some way. So, with that said, I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. I hope I kind of covered everything. I mean, I think usually I'll tie in my own experiences, which I did. I feel, even including the healing from today. And yeah, it's a great spirit animal to tap into. I wouldn't be afraid of them. I usually, I've even been in the mountains where people were scared. Oh, there's a snake, and I'm like, trust me, it's not gonna attack you, and it's not coiled up. If it's not coiled up, it's not ready to strike you. So just run by real quick, and then they'll run by, and I'm like, you're good. So, snakes are, yeah, I love snakes and all this good stuff. And like I said, they've shown up to me when they wanted to warn me about someone, and sure enough, when I seen a snake all slithering about, and I got that kind of negative feel, it didn't fail. I heard from someone that had that negative intention. So the snake was warning me, right? So I appreciate the snake wholeheartedly. It's a beautiful spirit animal. And yeah, tap in. Don't be afraid of it. Okay, thank you. Thanks for listening. Peace. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes you just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You just feeling it. And I want to feel this way forever.